Hi to your viewers of Equinoxe Television. We thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the news. We begin right away with our major stories. A monument in the field of journalism has quit the stage. Professor Eno Tanjong died over the weekend, and tributes have been pouring in honor of Professor Eno Tanjong. And today in this edition of the news, we will be telling you more about who Professor Eno Tanjong is. And also in this newscast, investigations have been opened following a free-for-all fight which ensued at the Presbyterian Church in Basa, Yerin, Douala. Those are our major stories. Welcome back, viewers. We just told you on the headlines that investigations have been opened following a free-for-all fight which ensued at the Presbyterian Church in Basa in the Douala 3 municipality, and the fight led to the disruption of Sunday service that was yesterday, and a pastor, one of the pastors of Presbyterian Church Basa, sustained severe injuries. Our reporter, Smart Njikangeber, completes the story.
It was a tense atmosphere that characterized the Presbyterian Church Basa in the Douala 3 subdivision this Sunday. Disgruntled Christians blocked the holding of a church service on grounds that the session of the church and the pastor were conniving to hijack the church's constitution. We have a problem between the session of the church and some members of the congregation. We have so many worries that we have forwarded to the presbytery office and the synod office, but till date no response from any of the two institutions. Reasons we wrote to the divisional officer of Douala 3 to inform him about our problems. The problem is that session members want to go ahead with the election of the chairperson after the resignation of the former chairperson of the church, but constitution gives full right to the assistant chairperson to take charge.
The story where the session and the hierarchy they bring up away, it is not what it should as per the church's constitution.
As a result of this misunderstanding, a free-for-all fight took place at PC Basa between some of the disgruntled Christians and the pastor of the church. Some of these Christians say the pastor must go. Equinoxe TV crew heading to the pastor for his own version was surprised to meet Reverend Pastor Ndip Philip Nkongo in a hospital bed. A report says he was having a rib problem after he was allegedly hit by some Christians on Sunday. Pastor Ndip Philip Nkongo refused talking to us on the mic, but gave us a document signed by the Synod Clerk of PCC, Reverend Mickey Hans Abia, which gave the go-ahead for the election of the new church chairperson of PC Basa. The Synod office in Boya is currently investigating on the incident that occurred at PC Basa to negotiate for peace to return in the house of God.
And also, religious, political, and inter-community conflicts have been frequent in Tibati. Tibati is a locality in the Adamawa region of the country, and the governor of the Adamawa region recently organized a meeting with the local population to seek ways to come out of those crises. Our reporter, Lucy Liengu, Esian more.
Inter-ethnic clashes in the northern part of Cameroon has caused many to flee to neighboring Chad, seeking for refuge. This is the case of Tibati in the Adamawa region, where political, social, religious and economic disputes have been gaining grounds.
Ethnic groups live in peace, but there are some problems about habitation and integration. For example, the antagonism between the so-called Habe by the Fulanis and Muslims is a real problem. And another problem is the brawl between Nyem and Pearl in Faro division about boundaries. This is a problem. So administration has to take measures to solve this problem because it will be very dangerous for peaceful cohabitation.
In an annual security coordination meeting organized by the governor of the Adamawa region, participants discussed solutions.
We are on the eve of the end of the year, and as such, we have decided to reinforce the measures against banditism and other social ills. So we do hope that the festivities of the end of the year will be conducted without hindrance in the Adamawa region. All the administrative authorities, alongside with the force of law and order, are on alert to ensure security, tranquility, for the benefits of the population.
At the end of the meeting, traditional rulers were reminded of the great role they have to play in the fight against conflict in the Adamawa region.
And from the Adamawa, we now take you to the far north region of the country, precisely at the Minawabu refugee camp, where several cases of cholera have been reported, and authorities there are taking measures to curb the spread of cholera and also sensitize the refugees on the importance of hygiene and sanitation. Malagori reports.
The non-respect of hygiene measures and the lack of potable water could be attributed to the causes of the cholera outbreak at the refugee camp of Minawau in the Mayut Sanaga division, far north region. The number of cases has been increasing for the past weeks.
Le 14, on notifie 2 cas de diarrhée et de vomissement.
It was on the 14th that we noticed some symptoms on a number of patients. Despite all this, the state of the patient did not permit us to assume it was cholera case. So we carried out some tests on the patient, which was positive.
Dépistage du choléra. Nous avons immédiatement procédé à dépister ces cas. Et ces cas ont été...
In a bid to limit the spread, a team was deployed by the public authorities together with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. A door-to-door campaign was launched by a group of volunteers as immediate measures. We sent a group of persons in different neighborhoods to sensitize the people on the respect of hygiene measures, such as the washing of hands. Thanks to this initiative, the number of cases has reduced. As the local authorities say, much is still to be done to better.
And in education, the government of Cameroon is taking measures to bring to limelight the more vocational training, which has somehow been relegated, and that was the reason for the visit of the Minister for Vocational Training, Issa Chiruma Bakari, in Douala. Our reporter, Staffman Babula Jonathan, completes the story.
Dans notre pays, malheureusement, la formation professionnelle est perçue à travers un prisme réducteur.
Cameroon's Minister of Employment and Vocational Training points out the poor perception, consideration and position given to vocational training in his country as a major hindrance to wealth creation and efforts to take the population out of poverty.
Au lieu de placer la formation professionnelle sur un piédestal d'honneur et de dignité,
Issa Chiruma Bakari says for a long time vocational training has not been given the value it deserves.
C'est la formation professionnelle qui a capacité et qualité à créer de la richesse.
Considering the imperative importance of training in wealth creation, government is partnering with the Cameroon Employers Organization for the establishment of 2 vocational training centers in Douala and Idea. It is the purpose of a partnership agreement signed at the Cameroon Employers Organization's headquarters in Douala Monday.
The Prime Minister instructed me to organize 2 constitutive general assembly. This is what we did a while ago. So these two General Assembly aims at designating those who are in charge of the management of the two vocational training, one place in Edea in charge of industrial maintenance, logistics and transport, and the second here in Douala in charge of agro-industrial and food processing.
Both parties lay emphasis on the point that technicians trained in the vocational training centers should be useful and productive immediately after graduation.
And now in politics, the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, the CRM political party, is urging Elections Cameroon to institute the electronic method of voting, which they think will facilitate the voting process. And according to the CRM party, with the electronic method of voting, if it is instituted in the next elections in Cameroon, everything is going to go on peacefully. As staffman Innocent Aze tells us more.
Militants of the CRM political party say the Littoral regional election that took place recently in Douala and ended on Sunday was all a success thanks to the initiated electronic voting system.
Everything is going smoothly. It's a computerized system, so each voter has a secret code that gives them access to the voting portal that is private to them, and then they vote. Once they are voted, that code is no longer valid. Another person cannot vote with that code anymore. At the end of the process, that is in about 1 hour, there will be automatic generation of the result tally sheet, what the French call PV, with the details of the result, and that will be announced. Since it's the regional election, it will be announced by the Secretary General, and that will be the end of the electoral process.
They believe if this electronic voting system is implemented in the Republic of Cameroon, voting will be rapid and election results made available as quick as possible. Honestly, if our government institute this system, it will greatly please everyone. I am judged from voting, and I am very happy the results did not delay, like is the case with Elekam. The CRM party continues with its drive towards electoral reforms within Elections Cameroon. If we are doing this, it is to tell Elekam to emulate from the CRM party and make elections really time-saving, fair and transparent. If Elekam cannot, they should tell us to help them out.
We are going to continue to do our implementation. So we are going to put the new units of CRM within the whole region. This team that was just elected with CRM and as a leader of the region of Littoral, things are going to move forward.
These newly elected CRM Regional Bureau members for the Littoral are expected to work in synergy and relentlessly for an outstanding political party in Cameroon. A party they are confident will not spare winning big in elections to be organized come 2025.
And now we move on to this obituary. We told you in the headlines that one of the founding fathers of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication of the University of Buea, Professor Eno Tanjong, is no more. The man who is known as a Pope of journalism in Cameroon died over the weekend, and tributes have been pouring across the country from former students of GMC, the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, and other journalism professionals in Cameroon. Let's now listen to some of those tributes compiled by a reporter for me, Armstrong Sander.
Are you man? You know. Oh, my man. You should do dancing contest. You know, dance.
To his student, he was more than just a teacher. Professor Eno Tanjong, referred to as the Pope of Journalism and Mass Communication, was simply a father to those who studied in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication of the University of Buea, JMC.
Someone who was not only a professor, who was not only a lecturer, but like a father to the people.
I mean, Prof. Eno was to me like a father. Father because back in our days in the university, he paid my school fees. This should be a shocking revelation to so many of his students. He paid my school fees, but he never wanted anybody to know.
Considering his student as his children, Professor Eno Tanjong was also concerned about their well-being. Students say he taught them how to live as a family and tips on how to survive in the university town of Buea.
He always told us, you have to fight your war. The fighting spirit that today we have been using to succeed in whatsoever we are doing.
He gave some time for lessons, sometimes to tell us what life is supposed to be about, and to make us to leave the environment within which we were studying.
Quitting the stage at 67, his ex-student called it an exit of a matchless scholar. The departure of the father of survival instincts, the Pope and co-founder of the department.
We have lost an extraordinary human being. French-speaking Cameroonians, just like English-speaking Cameroonians. But Professor Eno Tanjong took all of us as his children.
Before his death in Yaoundé, the illustrious academician and communication researcher was serving at the National Communications Council, the NCC, following his appointment of June 2021. The native of Fortabe village in the Manu division of the Southwest region dropped his chalk in a well-deserved retirement in 2020 before being appointed at the National Communication Council.
And whatever we're doing, we do it in God's name. Amen.
Amen.
In the second part of the news, we will be talking more about the person who the Pope of journalism is, Eno Tanjong. That will be in the second part of the news with a former student of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication of the University of Buea. And now we take you out of the country. An overcrowded concert in Kinshasa, capital of the DRC, leaves 11 persons dead and several others injured. And in Somalia, Islamist jihadist group, the Al-Qaeda, has killed at least 100 civilians. Let's now have a roundup of our forum page with Immaculate Fogui.
9 spectators and 2 police officers have died during a packed concert by African music star Fally Ipupa at the Mater Stadium in Kinshasa, capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Interior Minister Daniel Aselo Okito blamed the organizers for the death, saying the population went beyond 100% capacity. He deplored the loss of human life and said the organizers must be punished. And in Somalia, at least 100 people have died and 300 others wounded in Mogadishu after 2 car bombs exploded at Somalia's education ministry next to a busy market intersection. The Al-Qaeda-linked Islamist group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility, saying the ministry was at the center of war on mines that teaches Somalian children using Christian-based syllabus. The spokesperson of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, and World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus condemned the attack against innocent civilians. The chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, urged the international community to redouble its efforts to ensure robust international support. And in India, 141 people have died after a pedestrian bridge in the western state of Gujarat collapsed on Sunday evening. Dozens of persons were critically injured, with many others missing. The bridge in Mobi had been reopened just a week ago after repairs. More than 177 people have been rescued so far.
Accurate for that report, it brings us to the end of the first part of the news. Viewers, don't go away. Talking Point comes up next. Welcome back, viewers. Today we will be talking about a journalism monument. The man who is known as a Pope of journalism in Cameroon, Professor Eno Tanjong, died over the weekend, and you heard in the news tributes have been pouring from Eno Tanjong's former students of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication of the University of Buea. And this evening or tonight, we are receiving Moki Charles Linonge. Besides being a former student of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, he is also the head of Communication and General Affairs at the African Insurance Organization. And like I mentioned a while ago, a former GMC student. Moki Charles, thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Good evening, Anne, and good evening to your viewers. It's a pleasure being here to talk with you on something that touches me at heart.
Yeah, it has been a sad weekend and a sad day today among students of the Department of Journalism in Boya when they received the news of the demise of Professor Eno Tanjong. So how did, from what you observed, how did the GMC family receive the news of Eno's passing away?
It's a very emotional moment. It's very emotional for some of us. I mean, the news was so devastating. The shock to this moment has been so devastating, so deep. The pain has been so severe to lose somebody of Eno's caliber. We happen to have been the third batch of Eno's graduates in the Department of GMC. And I think I had never been through such an academic process and procedure where your educational milieu is transformed to a family. And that is the one thing that Eno did, which I would say if I had the capacity, I would raise Eno to the status of a saint for what he did to hundreds of Cameroonians. Not just those he trained like us, but to those who are related to us, because this family notion we got from GMC, we succeeded in spreading this concept to other milieu where we find ourselves. So the demise of Eno, it's just that's reality, that's life. Otherwise, it's still like a dream. It's like an illusion that Eno, I mean, there was a time Eno was sick. Some of us went close to him. We saw him at his worst state in health. But that was at the time when we were jubilating that Eno was back. That's when Eno bowed out of stage. So it's like the legendary saying where they say it's good to leave the stage before the drums go dead. It's like that's how Eno planned his departure, his exit, when he was at his peak, when his children, us, were already jubilating that our Eno is back. Eno bowed out of life.
And also, Professor Eno Tanjong had this way of relating with his students to make them feel at ease or free in class. That is why most of his students, former students of GMC, call him Eno, not doctor and not professor. What can you make of this closeness, this close relationship Eno Tanjong had with his students?
Personal relationship with each of his students. You know, I'm talking from the point of view as of a class delegate. I was, in fact, he appointed me a class delegate from year 1 right up to year 3. And it was my responsibility to know where all my fellow students were. If somebody was not in class, it was an obligation for me to find out and to report to the department. So you see how close and how attached Eno was. Then he had this comic way of transmitting knowledge. He mixed a lot of humor, and sometimes those, I mean, the comedy he injected was not only to transmit academic knowledge, but it was also for our daily lives. He used to use common examples, common analogies, and so on, and with a lot of jokes and a lot of humor in class to transmit all these notions. So Eno had this sentimental attachment to his JMC program and to his family. Eno was very close to the JMC family, to each and every student. That's why several years on, Eno could still call most of his students by their full names. You know, Eno will hardly see you somewhere and not remember your full names, you know. So that's just, he was so passionate about the JMC, and we loved it so much, you know.
And also, Mokin, most of the tributes pouring from students of those whom Eno taught, I want to say from across the world, because you can't get into, most of us know that it's difficult to get into a newsroom and you don't meet at least one student who was taught by Eno. And he also had this way of considering all his students as his children, and he didn't just teach them. That is what we got from the tribute in the report. He didn't just teach them how to survive in school, but how to face life fearlessly. He is sure going to be missed in that light.
Eno usually told us that he was preparing us for the world. He was preparing us for the world. That the battle out there was for the tough. It wasn't for the weak. It wasn't for the chicken-hearted. And he always told us that, I mean, if you were not strong enough, if you thought you could not face it, then drop it. Go and take add and drop. You remember his famous statement, go and get add and drop. You add other courses in other departments and you drop JMC. So if you're not ready for it, you had to forget it. His training, the training we got in GMC was a holistic training, not just to become a good journalist. I mean, let me give you an example for myself. I started as a PR or public relations officer for the University of Boya. I moved over to another NGO where I worked as communication officer. Then I went over to CRTV where I worked for 10 years and more before resigning. Now I find myself in another corporate world where I work basically, I do a lot of magazine productions, I publish books of, within the organization and so on. So you see the kind of training that Eno gave us, it was holistic. It was not just, geared towards one channel of communication. It's when we got to GMC that we saw communication in its many facets. At first we thought communication was just talking on radio and TV, that was the basic notion we had before we got to GMC. But when we got there, we realized that there were many other things that could interest us, in which we could excel. I have classmates or batchmates who are fine public relations officers where they are. I have those that are fine broadcasters where they are. I have those that are, in all facets of life. That is why somebody said, Eno and these your children, you have taken over the space. And I think that's what's happening in Cameroon. If you see the tributes coming in, if you see what is said about Eno in all social media platforms, on newspaper headlines, you know that Eno created an impact which remains immeasurable. You cannot quantify it. It's huge. It's enormous. Eno always told us that information is power. That the most powerful people on earth are those that have the most information about the world. And that's why you saw it in the training he gave us. You were trained to have as much information and to be very, very salient in your treatment of that information. So that's the kind of training we went through. He always told us that, I always love this analogy when it comes to class. I said, do you know why in this campus the vice chancellor is so revered? The vice chancellor it's because she has a lot of information about everything that happens here. She has a lot of information about you students, about the lecturers and so on. Do you know why the president of the United States is the most powerful? The president of Russia is the powerful? Because they have a lot of information. So information is power. It remains power. And that is the kind of training that JMC gave us. And I think JMC still gives, if I'm not mistaken. I've not been there for some years now, but I can speak for our early years as students under Eno. That is the training Eno gave us. And because of this passion for his JMC, because of his passion for excellence, because of his passion for the best in everything, we could not just help it to raise Eno to that rank of the Pope of JMC. Because, Eno was all around JMC. He gave his life to this program. We saw it as students, the early badges, the first badge, the second badge, up to the third badge to which I belong, can testify that Eno gave his life. Even those of us who interacted with Eno out of the school milieu, I was privileged to have lived in the same neighborhood with him. And I saw Eno give his life to JMC. He would hardly make 2 or 3 sentences anywhere without mentioning JMC. And the culminating point was when his students started graduating and started excelling in the job market. Eno became so proud. And I remember this famous incident. I was still in CRTV. I did a report, I've forgotten on which subject. When I left Beto and came to Moliko, and everybody, most of the students, of course, in Moliko, we used to go around the campus and told me, your name was the subject of one of Eno's lectures. Eno mentioned you, Eno mentioned this other one, Eno mentioned George Sunge Fuminyan, Eno mentioned Ndangam Lilian, Eno mentioned this and so on. So, you see, he was so proud of his students that he molded, and that is the same we gave back to Eno at each stage of our academic life. And of course, I want to mention that he was not alone in this struggle, you know. He had his able cardinal, Dr. George Ngwa, who was also and also remains one of our models. You know, Dr. George Ngwa also remains one of our models. You had Madame Do Betha. I mean, that was part of the team in those days. Julius Chetita, that was the core of JMC in those days. Before you had other part-time lecturers that, you know, were there to support, but everything centered around Eno Tanjong. And I think that's why he brought in this notion of a family. JMC remained a family. And that is how we have been operating from time immemorial to date. It remains a family. For evidence, when Eno passed on to eternity, barely within 24 hours, a WhatsApp forum was created with over 450, you know, participants in that forum, just to show you the impact of the man.
And Charles, we know that Professor Eno Tanjong had a team around him. There was Tifang Funge, Divine Victor, Henry Mulu, Chetita, and others. And since his demise, his students, former students, seem really inconsolable. And there are these fears, or there is this fear that his demise might somehow affect the training or the journalism training center in UB, which is JMC. Are you of that same school of thoughts?
When I died, I used the famous biblical phrase, "O death, where is thy sting? O death, where is thy victory?" But again, I said, Eno Tanjong is not dead because he lives in us. Eno created something. I said Eno was more like a concept. Eno had become a concept, not an individual, to some of us. So we are ready to carry forward this thing to the very end. Maybe till the day some of us are also called up to eternity. So it's true that there is a void because we are going to miss him. He's a fine scholar. The death of Eno is like what the Francophones will say, or they'll say it's a library that has been burnt down. You know, it's a very big vacuum. But again, I'll say rejoice again and rejoice because we are there. Even if others don't carry his legacy, don't perpetrate it, we are there. Eno lives in over 1,000 students that he trained. He used to tell us that he was giving us education without tears, you know. And each time he comes in the class, he says, okay, I'm going to give you, I don't want to go into those concepts and so on, but when we have a longer program, we'll enter into those concepts that Eno used to give us. Even, not the concepts, academic concepts, even the ones of survival concepts, survival instincts, learn how to fight your war, all those kinds of things. You remember his concept of the well-fed rat and the poorly-fed rat that were thrown in two separate jars. The well-fed rat could not come out of the jar of water, while the poorly-fed rat quickly jumped out of the jar of water. Just to tell you that the world is not for the weak, the world into which we find ourselves. That is why his training was geared towards that perspective, that it's not for weak people. I'm giving you skills, I'm arming you with tools with which you can face the world. So, Eno's demise, honestly, we can talk about Eno over.
And now my last but one question. About 2 years back, some former students of JMC threw a little party for Eno when he was going on retirement, and that actually moved Eno to tears. Can we say the organizers saw Eno's death coming?
When Eno died, I used the famous biblical phrase, "O death, where is thy sting? O death, where is thy victory?" But again, I said, Eno Tanjong is not dead because he lives in us. Eno created something. I said Eno was more like a concept. Eno had become a concept, not an individual to some of us. So we are ready to carry forward this thing to the very end. Maybe till the day some of us are also called up to eternity. So it's true that there is a void because we are going to miss him. He's a fine scholar. The death of Eno is like what the Francophones will say, or they'll say it's a library that has been burnt down. You know, it's a very big vacuum. But again, I'll say rejoice again and rejoice because we are there. Even if others don't carry his legacy, don't perpetrate it, we are there. Eno lives in over 1,000 students that he trained. He used to tell us that he was giving us education without tears, you know. And each time he comes in the class, he says, okay, I'm going to give you, I don't want to go into those concepts and so on, but when we have a longer program, we'll enter into those concepts that Eno used to give us. Even not the concepts, academic concepts, even the ones of survival concepts, survival instincts, learn how to fight your war, all those kinds of things. You remember his concept of the well-fed rat and the poorly fed rat that were thrown in two separate jars. The well-fed rat could not come out of the jar of water, while the poorly fed rat quickly jumped out of the jar of water. Just to tell you that the world is not for the weak, the world into which we find ourselves. That is why his training was geared towards that perspective, that it's not for weak people. I'm giving you skills, I'm arming you with tools with which you can face the world. So, Eno's demise, honestly, we can talk about Eno over and over and over, and I think it's one of the things that we as ex-students would like to do. We organize a day before his burial or his funeral to discuss Eno, to talk all these things at length. What we have done here is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much to be talked about Eno Tanjong. The man, the academician, the father, the Pope, and so on and so forth.
And coming back to this question, I said a while ago that some former students, Eno students, threw a little party for him when he was going on retirement, and that party actually moved Eno to tears. Can we say that because of the connection, the relationship so close he had with his students, they saw his death coming?
Consolation I have stems from the fact that 2 years ago, when Eno turned 65, a few of us came together to honor Professor Eno Tanjong. And I think I have some consolation in me that I was part of that we were able to show Eno his worth while he was still alive. You know, we have gotten to this, this point, especially in our continent, where we tend to honor people when they are dead. At some point, they come and put medals on coffins and so on, which to me is a waste of time. Eno students showed Eno his worth through that party which we organized for him, and I think it was worth organizing. And we thank those who brought that idea that we should have a party to honor Eno, first of all for a birthday gift and also as a retirement party, that somebody should be retiring, and we organize such a party to say thank you, Father, for what you have made us to be. We are what we are today thanks to Eno Tanjong. You know, so I think it's a call I'm going to send across to all the GMC students, past and present, that the passing to eternity of our Father, of our mentor, of our Pope, is a clarion call for us to tie the knots around us further, to solidify our links, our bond, that family bond. His wish, I'm sure up to his last moment, was to make sure that this family remains the family he had prayed for, and nothing should scatter. On the contrary, his death should bring us closer now as a family, no matter the differences, so that we perpetuate this concept called Eno Tanjong. He was not an individual, he had become a concept, an ideology.
And now my last question, we can't talk about Professor Eno Tanjong or Eno without talking about unity, family life, and above all, humility. Eno used to say you want to be known as a man who made JMC a family, And he taught us humility, or he taught his students humility, always telling them that they should know that humility is the greatest virtue. Did you, what can you say about that?
He preached humility and he practiced humility from his lifestyle. You see, when we entered GMC, we could count the number of doctors, on campus. Eno was amongst the top-ranking doctors, but you could hardly see Eno on the road, and you see the thing written over him. You got Eno's doctorate from his words. When Eno spoke, that's when you saw it. But on a daily life, day-to-day living, Eno was as simple as any other person. I remember we used to share drinks with Eno and Dr. George. You could even see from Eno's car in those days. I'm sure more before the other generations came, Eno had a better car. But when we entered GMC, I think Eno had one of the cars which I don't want to describe it, just to show you how humble he was. And he preached it. And those are things he used to tell us in class. I remember this famous notion where he told us that if you want to jump high, you need to stoop. You need to stoop. So if you just stand straight and stand stiff, you want to jump, you won't go high. For you to go higher, stoop, go down, and you jump, you spring higher. So it was a notion that he showed us. He showed us, he taught us how to be humble. He didn't just tell us how to be humble, he taught us how to be humble.
Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation.
Well, it's a pleasure. As I say, it's painful to talk about Eno in the past. But again, I am of the school of thought and of the opinion, and I have that consolation in me that Eno lives in us. So we are going to do everything possible to perpetuate Eno for eternity. So Eno is gone, yes. It's like the Francophone say, long live Eno.
Rest in peace, Eno. Rest in peace to the Pope of journalism of GMC. Your legacy lives on. Thank you, viewers, for always being with us on Equinoxe Television. We have come to the end of the news, but don't go away. Our programs continue. Bye-bye for now.